Students, welcome back to our online discussion. So we will discuss for this particular discussion or topic number 2 about food safety and hygiene practices. So being food and beverage service staff, you will involve dealing with food. Okay, so for that reason, you must know that your action, health, and personal habits affects the safety and the quality of the service. So you must responsibly perform and observe the safety practices in food handling. So in our previous discussion, we discussed the importance of professional work habits and skills of an F&B service staff. So it is not enough to have a professional work habits and skills, but also we need to know how to handle the food. Now, you need to listen carefully for this lesson or discussion because it will discuss about the topics that an F&B service staff need to know in terms of complying with the hygiene requirements set by the industry. So every industry or also the government, they have the policy. So we need to comply with these hygiene requirements. And I will show to you the following practices that you need to ensure that you have the personal hygiene for food safety that must be attained. So I prepare here a chart. We have do's and don'ts. So we will discuss first about the do's. So there are 3, 6, 9, 10 reminders that we need to practice these things. First, before we will go to the establishment, we need to take a bath. It's very important. We make sure that our body is clean before we will engage to the work. Number two, if you are assigned in kitchen, you should always wear the hairnets or the hats. The purpose for this is to avoid the hairs contaminating the food. So we need to wear hairnets and hats. Number three, we need to use face towels to dry sweats. There are, there are some workers in the establishment. They have used their bare hands, and the possible negative effect on that because they will wipe the sweat in their hands and they will touch the food. So there is a contamination will happen if we will practice that. So we need to use face towels to dry sweats. Next, number four, we need to wash our hands before having contact with any food items. If we will hold the ingredients, for example, if we are in the kitchen, we need to wash our hands. Just like before we will eat our meal, we need to wash our hands. Because even though that in our minds, our hands were clean, but we need to make it sure that our hands were clean. That's why we need to wash our hands with soap. And then number five, we need to use clean clothes for each shift, and we need to change when necessary. Just like for you as a student, you have uniforms. You have set of uniforms. You need to change the clothes regularly. And if there's a dirt on your uniform, we need to change it. Okay. So if you are also working in establishment, we need to change the clothes regularly to make sure that there's no bacteria that can contaminate the food that we handle. Number six, we need to cover the cuts and the sores with waterproof dressing. So for example, if you are in the kitchen and then accidentally you cut your finger, so there's a blood on it. So we need to wash our hands with the running water and apply soap. And then we need to go to the clinic so that the nurse will put a waterproof dressing. So we should not allow ourselves that we will just allow the cuts in our hands as we do some assignments, for example, in the kitchen. So we need to cover the cuts and sores with waterproof dressing. Next, number seven, we need to keep facial hairs neat and controlled. That is why it is not allowed in the establishment to have mustache or beards in our face, especially for the men. That is why we need to keep our hairs neat and also controlled. There's a proper haircut. Next, number 8. We need to inform our supervisor immediately when we are sick. As we have discussed in the previous lesson or discussion, if we are not well, we need to inform our supervisor immediately so that they will arrange a schedule. They will inform other employees to work your assigned task that you cannot able to perform because you are sick. So we need to inform our supervisor, and we should not go to the establishment if we are sick, so that we will not it will not affect to the our employees, co-employees or co-workers. Okay. And then number 9, we need to use disposable gloves if appropriate. We will handle some, for example, food, for example, in the kitchen. There are some policy of the establishment that they need to use disposable gloves. After they have done with their work, they will dispose their gloves. Okay, so they will not wash their gloves, but instead they will dispose it, and they will use another or fresh or new gloves. Last, number 10, we need to cut our fingernails in a short, and we need to keep it clean. That is why it is very important as a worker or employee in a hospitality and tourism industry that we need to avoid color of our nails, and we need to avoid long nails. We need to cut it short, and we need to keep it clean. Make it sure that our nails were clean. Again, for the reason for this is to avoid contamination. So possibly next meeting, I will check your fingernails if it is cut short and it is clean. So it's very important. Next, we will discuss about the don'ts, things that we should not do in the establishment. Number 1, do not use the same container when refilling food. For example, this one is already put for example, a corn soup. So if we will get another kind of menu or food, we should not reuse the same container, but instead we need to use another container. Okay, for we need to avoid yes, contamination. Next, do not smoke or spit in any food area. For example, that you have seen in the, for example, in the kitchen or near in the kitchen, we need to avoid spitting, or we need to avoid smoking. So other establishment, they will provide space for smoking area. So the employees or the guests can freely have smoke or use the cigarette in that particular area. So we need to avoid that or spitting on the food area. Next, number 3. Do not touch your face and hair after washing your hands. The reason for this is our hairs and our hands are, there's a possibility that there are dirt or there are bacteria that will um, have in our face and in our hair. So we need to avoid touching our hairs and our face, especially if we will wash our hands, because our hands are wet, and there is a big chance that the bacteria or the dirt can, attach in our hands. And then if there are, bacteria or dirt in our hands, and we touch the food, so it can cause contamination as well. Next, do not report to duty if you have any communicable disease until clearance from a physician is secured. Just what I have mentioned earlier, if we are sick or if we feel we have a disease or communicable disease, we should not go to the establishment, but instead we need to stay in our house or stay in the establishment, I mean in the boarding house, and we need to have a checkup if it is if we are okay, and we need to take a medicine in order for us to become well again. And after that, we will have to go to the establishment. So we need to inform the supervisor. Next, number five, do not touch, cook, or ready to eat food with your bare hands. That is why there's a proper handling of food. For example, proper way in um, touching the plates or transferring the plates um, from the tray to the table. So we need to avoid our fingers to be touched to the cooked food or to ready to eat food, especially the soup. So there's a proper way on handling this particular food. So in your next, I think next semester or next year, you will have food and beverage operation that has a laboratory. So there are more on demonstration. So the faculty or the instructor will teach you on how to properly handle the plates, the food, or the tray. Next, number six, do not wear your uniform in other public places before coming to work or after work. This is the usual mistake by the um, industry employees that they wear their uniforms in the public places. For example, they will go to the mall, they have a duty, for example, 2 p.m. and then they have a lunch in the mall, for example, in Alturas or in ICN. They will take their meals and they are already wearing their uniform. They are walking on the malls. They will buy some products in the malls and they are already wearing the uniform. So that is not appropriate. That is not allowed. So we need only to use our uniform in the workplace, not in the public places. Next, there is an important reminders here about the uniform and accessories. Okay, so we have here, do not wear loose fitting clothes and we need to press clothes all the time. As you can observe with these two servers, their clothes were well pressed. Okay, they have ironed their clothes or their uniform. So we need to use the loose um, uniform and we should not also use very fit uniform, just a normal. Okay. Next, we need to avoid wearing big jewelries, just like in the pageant. So we should not use that big jewelries. As you can observe here, they're just using a pearl earrings here. Next, we need to fasten buttons, clips, name tags, and pins securely. We need to double check the pins here, the buttons. They have buttons here. They need to make sure that it is securely fastened. Next, we need to wear socks and we need to use plain socks. For example, it's black, everything must be black. If it is white, everything must be white. There's no other design on the socks. We need to use plain socks. And do not wear open-toed shoes. We need to use closed-toed shoes. Close. Okay, and we should avoid wearing slippers. Next, for women, long hairs should be tied back. As you can observe here, if you have a long hair, it should be tied back, just like in this picture. And for men, beards and mustache should be shaved neatly. As you can observe in this man server, he has no mustache and he has no beards. So we need to shave our beards. So that is the right thing to do. For example, if you are working in the hospitality and tourism industry. So as now, as a student, if you are not yet working in the hospitality and tourism industry, it's still allowed to have mustache and beards. But if you are working now in the establishment in hospitality and tourism industry, beards and mustache is not allowed. So we need to shave neatly or regularly. And lastly, this is the last slides, uniform and accessories. Each food and beverage service establishment have different policies when it comes to wearing a uniform. So, however, aside from wearing the uniform, the management provides food and beverage staff should observe the following measures as well. So there are the policy, the requirement of the establishment have a differ or they have different policies and requirements as to wearing uniforms and applying policies about food handling and hygiene practices. So we have done in our topic number 3 about food safety and hygiene practices. Thank you.